Gwenna Hunter is a Los Angeles-based vegan activist. She coordinates events for vegan outreach and is the founder of Vegans of LA and the Vegans for Black Lives Matter Facebook group. Gwenna is also a public speaker and writer. Her essay titled "Copy and Paste Activism Does Not Work: Perspectives from a Person of Color" is published in the newly released Voices for Animal Liberation anthology. And thank you so much for taking the time today, Gwenna.
No, I'm excited. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm always really interested in how and when people find the vegan pathway. Do you want to tell your story?
I would love to. So basically for me, my journey started unbeknownst to me. My journey started, I think like back in 2008 as a vegetarian. And I did that journey as a challenge with a friend who wanted to do something called the Book of Daniel's Fast, which is out of the Bible, where you abstain from eating any animals or any animal-based products. And the purpose of the fast typically is to kind of like, in current terms, raise your vibration and your frequency and to be closer to God and to center and balance yourself. And so that was the purpose of it. And I never done anything like that before. And it was just something, it felt right. When she said that, I was like, don't eat any meat or any cheese or anything like that for 28 days. And it was scary, but it was, I think my soul knew I was getting ready to embark on a new journey. So it just felt right. I was just like, okay, I'll do this. And at the end of that 28 days, I had lost weight. My skin was clear. I used to get very severe menstrual cycles that I planned my life around my cycles because they were so severe and excruciating. And I would be very emotional. And, I would save up my vacation days and sick time because every month, like I couldn't function for a few days. And they were very heavy and spotting. And when my cycle came this time, it was literally like 2.5 days. It ended. It was light. I was pleasant. I didn't have one cramp or any form of discomfort. And somebody that's used to living, like this controlled my life. I'm like, what? And so I was like, okay, well, it must be the meat. Eating meat is making this happen. So I decided to be a vegetarian, kind of like / pescatarian. But it had nothing to do with any animals whatsoever. And I remember like just kind of researching, people that were vegetarian and different things. And I remember coming across a video, a PETA video that was narrated by Pamela Anderson. And she was talking about chickens. And she was doing an undercover investigation. And she was saying how chickens form their own communities and how, they're kind of like us, have their own little cliques and things like that. And I'm like, chickens? I didn't even think that they could think, let alone form a thought, let alone talk about having cliques and communities. I was like blown away by that information.
So you did not grow up on a farm, I guess.
No, but what's so crazy is, I tried to have regrets, but there's one point in my life I regret, but I was a kid. My grandmother lived off the land. Like she lived off the grid and lived on the land. And as a kid, I hated it because it was like, she grew everything. I wanted to go to the store, she grew everything. She wasn't vegan, so I'm not going to go deep into that, but she did have animals. They burnt their trash, they recycled. They didn't have hot water, so they didn't want hot water. They boiled their water to make it hot instead of having gas. Everything was just so natural. And so I think but I would only go there like in the summers, and even then it'd be like, oh God, all these animals here, and there was cats everywhere and dogs and all types of stuff. And I thought, I hated the way they lived. But now I'm like, oh my God, like she had, for the most part, the right idea. So yeah, I just always looked at animals as things and never connected them to having emotions or feelings or any of that. It never crossed my radar, was never a conversation. That's just the environment I grew up in. So fast forward, I started going through this like little weird experiences. And it's interesting. I was talking to my mom about this just the other day. I remember going to the store to buy a chicken. This is right before I switched over, right before. And I remember looking at the chicken. It was a whole chicken. And I remember looking at it and I'm like, this looks like a baby, like a human baby. And I was just like, it was like starting to like weird me out a little bit. And I was just having little weird experiences. So yeah. So anyway, I'm rewinding and fast forwarding. So fast forward, I ended up having this experience in my dream. And in the dream, I connected with a cow. I'm flying in the sky. Yes.
Was this before the Daniel's diet or after
After.
Book of Daniel's? After the 28 days. And
Yes.
then I love this story about the cow.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. And so I'm flying in the sky and I look down and I see this cow in these beautiful green pastures. And the cow looks up at me. And when the cow looks at me, we lock eyes and we merge and we became one. And I was the cow and I felt consciousness, thoughts, feelings, body, like everything. I was the cow. And when I came out of the dream, I was just crying uncontrollably. Like I couldn't stop crying because I'm like, oh my God, they love their children. They're aware of themselves. They're like us. They think, they have emotions, they hurt. I mean, it was mind shattering because I'd never made, and it's crazy because I've always considered myself spiritual. I've always had supernatural experiences in my dreams, in real life. So I've always not just like planted myself in this linear reality to where it's only things that you can touch, see, and feel. I've always believed beyond that. But this was like, whoa, nobody told me any of this.
So you were ready for it.
I was ready for
And the
it.
cow found you. And so were you like in a field and you could see through the cow's eyes, or was it more of just a feeling of being?
It was more like when I was the cow, it was like almost like what was coming into me were memories and experiences. And so I experienced the love that they have for their children. I experienced the fear and the terror that humans. And thank you for asking this question because nobody ever asked me what I saw in the experience. I just say I had it and then I woke up and cried. But yeah, I could feel the emotions, the sadness of like, hey, I'm a cow, I'm aware, I'm alive, but you all are treating me like this. But hey, I'm just because I'm in this body doesn't mean that I'm not, fully aware. I felt love, um, love that they have for the human race. Like they're very aware of us as a species. And it's interesting because they have incredible, like beyond our capacity to understand, their empathy for us is beyond our understanding. And I wish everybody could get tapped in, because that would be instant veganism. It would be game over, but that's not how it works. But
So it's amazing to me that I mean, I've had some pretty profound experiences myself, but nothing like that. And that this memory and these feelings, it sounds like they've stayed with you for a really long time. Like it's a really vivid memory.
well, yeah, and then to take it a step further, so as I'm crying, I mean, I couldn't stop. My face is like soaking wet with tears. And then after I compose myself, I'm like, did that just happen? Was this, and let me tell you, as much as I'm a believer, I'm also a skeptic. So I'm a believer and a skeptic all in the same body. So when something happens, I'm not just like, oh, this happened. I'm like, wait a minute, this just happened? Was this a figure of my imagination? Like I question it. And so I'm like, was this a random something. And then all of a sudden, I physically felt a warm sensation right over my heart. It was almost like somebody put a heater over my heart. And and I'm feeling it, and I'm looking, I don't see anything, and I put my hands on it. When I put my hands on it, I felt the most profound peace. Like I felt like it was so still and quiet. And I felt like I could have just bathed in it and stayed in it the rest of my life and been like, bye humanity, like y'all can have this. Like it felt so tranquil. And I felt like she gave me that. You know, I always say she gave me a piece of her heart. I don't really truly know what she gave me, but I know that she did that to let me know you don't need to question this, that what you felt was real. And after I felt that, I was just like, okay. But here's the thing, so, you know, in my mind, I'm just like, oh my God, even though I wasn't eating cows anymore, but I didn't care if other people did. That was like, you know, you want to eat a steak next to me? Okay, that's fine. Like, I just choose not to because it makes my body feel sick, but it wasn't a thing of compassion or anything like that. So after I had that, I'm just like, oh my God, they're aware and we're eating them. And it was like disgust, like, oh my God, we're eating dead people. And it was like I woke up in the middle of my own horror movie. I'm like, oh my God. But you know what's crazy? I still didn't make the connection to dairy.
Wow. That's interesting.
I know I'm very hard-headed. Did not make a connection to dairy because I still was in the program. That's why when people judge people for not getting it, you don't understand the layers of programming that have to be tapped into. And like you're literally deprogramming your own software or someone's helping you deprogram it. That's why it's like when people are so judgmental and they'll say, oh, how can oppressed people, you know, not be vegan? It's like, you don't understand. They don't get it.
Well, we've been programmed so strongly. I mean, with health messages, and we need meat to be, or milk, especially milk. It took me a long time to get the whole milk thing too. And I heard it once, and I just, and it sort of affected me for a bit. But then I kind of thought, oh, well, everybody else is doing it, you know, and it's really, I know it's a regret of mine. I didn't get that sooner. So your body changed during this 28 days, even while still consuming dairy?
Well, the 28 days I didn't consume any dairy.
Okay.
I didn't consume any dairy, but I accredited it to the fact that I wasn't eating meat. And that did help me not have the cramps anymore, but I still got like the breakouts and things like that. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was completely clueless, and I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. There wasn't a vegan in sight. There wasn't a vegetarian. I didn't know any vegetarians, and you know, everybody thought that I was the oddball just for being vegetarian / pescatarian. And there just wasn't a lot of information that I was attracted to. So I would look at stuff and read it, and it would be like, oh, you know, tofu and this, and you know, I had tofu before, and I'm like, hell no, absolutely not.
if nobody's around who knows how to cook it, yeah.
So you know, the vegan things I had before, I'm like, I'm not gonna go all the way vegan because this stuff is horrible. You know, like this is all I got. Like you're gonna take this away, you know, my food pleasure from me. But I thought that it was very noble, like, wow, to be a human being and to be vegan and not eat any animals or any dairy or anything like that. I thought, wow, these people are kind of like extremists, but, you know, kudos to them. But I just thought they were kind of like crazy, which, you know, won't go there, but yeah.
So, and then how did you end up in California?
I came here to visit a friend. I had one little medium-sized suitcase, and my cat was with me, and we were just gonna stay for like 3 weeks. So I was kind of going through like a career transition. So I had some free time, and the person I came to stay with was like, well, why don't you just, move here? You not, you have this time to yourself. And I was like, well, maybe I will. And things went very sour, extremely, extremely sour. I literally found myself like homeless. At one point, I was literally a day away from like going to a shelter. And lady, it's interesting, a lady named Rhea Roma, I had put out something on what is that platform? Craigslist. And I'm like, I'll do your social media for you, for your business, in exchange for, partial rent. And all I got was like perverts, but she sent me a little card and said, call me. So I reached out to her, and she's like, hey, I have a couch you can rent. And it was right in my little tiny budget. And she let me bring my cat. Wow. And when I met her, she was vegan. And she was like, just, you can't bring any meat in here. I was like, well, I'm vegetarian. And she's like, all right, cool. She was like, but don't bring any meat or any fish in here. And don't bring any. And because I had a little bit of food, I had like some feta cheese, and I had it in her fridge. And she was like, I'm going to let you keep this one in here. She said, but after this, no more cheese. And I was like, dang, like, what's it to you, And I remember her one time talking to me about, she was like, it's horrible what they do to the animals. And I remember her like balling up in a knot and crying. And she's like, what they're doing to the animals like right this second. And I remember thinking, even though I was aware of the cow, I still wasn't aware of a lot of the practices. And I was just thinking like, she was being like extra emotional. And then I end up seeing the video, Dairy is effing scary. And when I saw that, that's when everything made sense. And I was like, I get it. Enough said, universe. I finally got it. And that was it for me. When I saw at the end of that video, I was crying, and I was like, I won't ever touch another piece of cheese. Like I'll never do it again.
That's amazing, because it's just like a 5-minute video, right?
Yeah. And it changed, it made everything. I guess I needed to get the compassion piece first to make that. And then it was still like, I still hadn't made the full connection. And then I saw that, and I'm like, oh my God, look what we do to her udders. She cries when we take her son away. She's running after him. Look how we, artificially inseminate them, how we keep them on these racks, and the stuff that it was just, once I saw that, I was like, I'll never, ever, 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 ever go back to that. And it made me kind of like crazy for a while, because I was just like, oh my God, people don't know. People need to know this. And so, I was posting on my social media account at the time, all these slaughter videos, that's what, especially when you're new, you're like, you want everybody to see all the brutal stuff.
And as soon as they know, everybody's going to change, right?
Exactly. Right. They just need to see it, and then that's it. But that's not really what happened. Like, people were unfollowing me and not responding anymore. And, it was just making people pissed off. And I think I was like 4 months in, because I started researching more things. And then I started finding out other hidden truths, that the meat and dairy industry, they fund the public schools. And I started learning more about the pharmaceutical industry and the animal agriculture industry. And I started seeing these connections. And I'm like, who's running this planet? Like, then I started finding out that we don't need protein from an animal. I'm like, well, I'll be damned. Like, lie after lie after lie. And it made me angry, because I'm like, somebody is really trying to program us to be really dark and evil. And I'm like, who's running this ship? And so it just started making me question everything in my I was already kind of someone that questioned things, but this was a whole new area I had never even tapped into. And so, yeah, I was an angry vegan for about 4 months. And then I had to realize, like, because I saw other people that were like angry vegans, and I'm like, and they had been like that for like years. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be like that forever. I function better when I'm more calm and when I'm happy. And I started like volunteering, and I was already doing that anyway as a vegetarian. Like I hadn't gone vegan all the way when I started getting involved in different little aspects, little small things. But once I uncovered this, I was like, I need to be a part of this movement. And I had never been a part of any type of movement, social justice, rights movement. I had never been to a protest. I had never done any of that. It was always, I watch it on TV or I see it online, but I had never participated in anything that was standing up for rights. So I knew I was destined. I'm like, this is where I belong. And so I started doing things like to see where I fit in. So I would go to like protests. And after the protest, I would feel angry because it was like a lot of yelling, and then you got to deal with people. And I'm like, I don't think my personality is really cut out to be a protester. Then I would go to, can't think, but I would just go to different types of actions just to see where I fit in. I think I did a speak out at like a Whole Foods, and that was like terrifying as hell doing that. And I'm like, yeah, this ain't really for me either. Like, so I kept trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I'm like, I want to feed people in people of color communities and give them this because I started seeing that the vegan food was good. I'm like, this stuff is freaking amazing.
It's not just bland tofu. There's more to it than that. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, this stuff is absolutely amazing. I'm like, people need to know that it doesn't taste like rubber and that they can still have their favorite food. So I'm like, I got to do this. And so it was my idea. It was just an idea. But I'm like, I don't have 10 cents to put together to make this happen, but eventually I want to. And then what ended up happening was I ended up getting a Facebook message from one of the founders at Vegan Outreach. And they're like, hey, we've heard about you. Because I was doing like meetups and things like that and just like volunteering everywhere. And there's not a lot of Black people in LA that are into animal rights. Now, there are a lot of vegans, but not many that actually participate with the general animal rights community. They may do their own stuff or do their own thing or do something, but not a lot really participate. And so I think I stood out. And so they're like, yeah, we want to see if you're interested in working with us and going on tour and going to some HBCUs in the South. And I'm like, heck yeah. I was like desperate looking for work. And I already thought like somebody needs to pay me to be vegan. And so they contacted me, and me and another young lady went on a 30-day tour in the South to historically Black colleges and universities. And we would just basically go there, show up, and sometimes we have a table, but we would like, just pass out leaflets with information and then just talk to people. And, some of the stories that we would hear would be just, I remember hearing a young lady who had lupus, and she said that she had went plant-based and it was the best she had ever felt. But her doctor told her, you can't thrive on a plant-based diet, and told her that she needed to go back to eating red meat. And she even admitted that some of her symptoms came back. She's like, but my doctor said. I'm like, well, your doctor isn't God. Like, that's just a person that's flawed just like everybody else. And I like begged her to reconsider, but she couldn't let go of the fact that my doctor said it. So if my doctor said it, if I go against it, I'll die. It's like, no, if you go with it. But yeah, just some of the stories were just so interesting, and the people that we were meeting, and I'm still in touch with some. So yeah.
That was, excuse me, that was before like Dr. Mills and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and What the Health documentary and all that
That
sort
was
of thing.
before the What the Health, yes.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was before What the Health. But
I think those documentaries have really helped with
oh,
that.
tremendously. The
Even
What
me.
the Health, I
Yeah.
think, brought
Yeah.
so many Black people to eating plant-based. That necessarily made them activists or care about animals, but it triggered something in them where so many were like, I'm not eating this anymore. I'm gonna give this up. So, you know, that was amazing.
Well, yeah, I noticed even like for myself, even being vegan for a long time and knowing I
Mhm.
don't want to do this anymore for the animals, for the
Mhm.
earth. But the for my health piece was always, there was always that little question in the back of my brain, like, well, I don't know, maybe maybe it's not so bad if those people choose to do that, because
Yeah,
but once those documentaries came out, that I think that really shifted
it
for me
did.
a lot. Yeah.
It
All right.
absolutely did.
So you're traveling around the South now, and you're getting paid to be a vegan. Sounds
Yeah,
like.
getting some money in my pocket finally after a while, and it's helping me get back on my feet. And so we did that for 30 days, and then we came back. Um, they created positions for us called community events coordinators, and she was in New York, and I was responsible for Los Angeles. And so what I got paid to do was feed people, and so I would go into Black communities or Latino communities, and I had a budget, and I would provide full meals, and I would make sure that the meals were catered towards their culture. And I remember the very first time, one of the very first times, because we also had to give talks with the food. So it wasn't just like come and eat. There would have to be some type of education or conversation with it. And I was terrified to do this, by the way, to like talk in front of people.
The
Wasn't scared
food,
to feed them.
the food part you were okay with.
The food part I was fine with, but standing in front of people and talking like,
Oh, I'm
oh,
surprised because you're so good at it. I
oh,
love it.
I get anxiety every single time I'm about to speak. It lessens and lessens. It's not as much as it used to be, but I get the breathing, and so now I just like take a deep breath and go, and then I talk, like I let the talk come out of that breath. But yeah, I get anxiety every single time. But this was my first time, so I was literally like shaking and sweating because I was in a community called Watts, which is a Black community, and the people that were there, this was like the inner city. So I had been trained to give these talks a certain type of way that were more about animal rights and, you know, more along those lines. And I got cussed out the very first time I gave a talk because, you know, people wanted to know, like, why am I talking about the rights of animals when Black people still are fighting for their rights? And so after that experience, you know, I'm like, I have to do this. Most people talk to people about veganism the way that how their gateway was. So for me, it's more, I can relate more to like animal consciousness, you know, talking to people that animals are conscious, like they're aware. So that's easier for me to talk about. So I started tailoring my talks more along those lines. And I would slide in stuff about, I would never use the term animal rights. Like, won't do that again. But I would just talk about the consciousness of animals and their emotional intelligence, and also, you know, talk about health and the fact that we're eating, you know, dead bodies and that we've been programmed. And so I started doing this on a regular basis and going to different communities. I go to like libraries or find like Black nonprofit organizations because I'm like, hey, we'll feed you, we'll feed the whole crew. And they're like, okay, if you're gonna feed us, then come on down. And so yeah, offering, you know, to feed everybody. And a lot of people would be on board because they wanted to see. And because I would tell them, like, I promise you, you won't be disappointed in the food. You won't know the difference. If you do, you let me know. I said, but I guarantee. And every single time we've done these talks, it's always been a hit. There's probably one time my chef I had a chef that was going to come through and they canceled, and I had to hurry up and prepare the food. Wasn't all that great. So, but other than that, the food is always amazing. And
so this was, I'm guessing this was before Black Lives Matter, it sounds like.
yes.
Yeah, okay. So can we shift a little bit just to the intersectionality? I'm really interested in looking at that because you mentioned that there's this perception in some people that if you're working on rights for one group of beings, then that means that the other groups of beings are being ignored or whatever. And I think we find that in the vegan community too, that we're a lot of vegans are really focused on animal liberation, which is great, but there also needs to be space for, if it's impacting one of us, it's impacting all of us, and we
That's
can
right.
cross species with that too, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead. I want to talk about your Facebook group, the Black Lives Matter Facebook group, but whatever you want
Yeah,
to.
I think it's really selfish for people to expect you, especially as a Black person, to not be intersectional. We don't have a choice. If
Right.
we're in this movement, we're intersectional whether we want to be or not. It's not a question like, oh, can you not?
if,
We are.
if you're in that body, I think you
That's
have,
the thing. It's like we're in this body, we're in this reality.
right.
You're not escaping all the BS that's going on in the world, unless you're like, there's no amount of shelter that can protect you from all the craziness that's happening right now. So we don't have a choice but to be intersectional. And, obviously it's your choice on what battle you want to fight, but it's like what usually annoys me is when people go out of their way to say they don't want to be intersectional or to talk about the issues with intersectionality in the world, and it's always a white person. Always, always, always. And it's like you have the luxury to make that statement because you can check in or check out. Even if you're an ally, you can check in this and feel the hurt, and then you're like, oh, this is too much, let me check out for a bit. We don't have that option. And the thing is, you're in a human body. Why are you scared to speak up for humans? And why does it have to be one or the other? We're telling other people, expand your capacity to love and to accept that these animals are conscious and that they're aware and that we're hurting them and what we're doing. How can you ask them of that, but yet you can't do it? Like it's a double-edged thing. Like you have to expand your capacity as well.
Right.
So
And it doesn't mean you have to give up on your own activism. Like you say, I mean,
right.
we find our area of focus, right? Like for me, this is what I love to do. I have a hard time with anger and going to rallies and feeling all that anger and like doing outreach and having to like argue with people. That to me is just too much anxiety. So my focus, this is my focus, but that doesn't mean that I will just ignore all the other issues to do with First Nations, freedom and racism of all sorts, and peace and justice. I mean, it's all connected, right? So
that's right.
yeah, I agree with you. I think our hearts are big enough to, we don't have to take it all on, but we can find places where we intersect. And then like the Black Lives Matter, vegans for Black Lives Matter, that seems like that should be a no-brainer. But apparently it's not quite that simple, hey?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, honestly, I'm a little surprised that I have the people that are in there because when I created the group, I thought, 250 at the most, because of my experience in this movement. So I'm thinking, maybe we'll get 250 people that'll come into the group. And to me, I didn't really care what race people were, just come on in. And I created the group not like thinking like I'll work on it in a few days and maybe send some invites out. And I think I probably sent like about maybe 10 invites to some people that I knew would be interested in being a part of it. And the next day there were like over 500 people in the group. And I was like, oh my God, like, the next day there were like 1,000 and then 1,500. And I was like, okay, we got to come up with some rules because I can't have this being the 20,000 person group because the content and the conversations were so heated, because it was literally off the heels of George Floyd. So everybody was feeling guilt and anger and frustration. And I kept finding like there were so many people, especially white people, that were calling each other racist. Oh no, you're right. Like, I'm like, I don't want to look at this when I come into the group. Like, it was just almost like a civil war.
Oh dear.
Of just like people going at it, but also all of them considering themselves allies. And so thankfully some people stepped up to offer help, because I'm like, I can't handle this. I have a job also too. I got other responsibilities. It was like a room full of like, children. And so yeah, so now there's a lot more order in the group, and we have discussions on really triggering things. And the purpose of the group, it keeps evolving, so I never say like it's this or it's that, but overall it's learning how to unify and tolerate each other. Because what a lot of people will share in the group is that and I'm talking about white allies specifically, is a lot of them will come in the group with a lot of like guilt and shame, and saying they had no idea. We don't know how you all have dealt with it all this time. I'm sorry that I lived in a bubble. Sorry that I turned my eye to it. Sorry I didn't believe you. I thought racism wasn't an issue in this country, and that you all were like exaggerating. And then you'll have Black people in the group. They're like, yeah, we tried to tell you, that this is going on. And so sometimes there's conversations where people it gets heated, and then someone wants to leave the group. But it's like, you know what, I'll encourage people, like, just because something hurt your feelings, you got upset, stay the course. It's like a family. They don't get along all the time. They probably hurt each other the most. And it's like, learn how to stay the course and learn how to deal with hurt feelings and move past it, instead of like being upset that someone corrected you or that someone said this, and then you just want to block them. And that's not how we unify, because being an ally doesn't mean that you agree on how to get on the path to liberation, but you agree we need liberation, but you may decide to take a different path, and that's totally okay, because we need everybody boots on the ground covering the whole thing. So
right. It's not like it's all going to change overnight. You got to start with having
no,
these tough conversations, right?
exactly.
And so have you seen some kind of progress from within the group? Are there bonds being made? And
There are a lot of bonds being made. We'll do sometimes check-ins, and I'll ask specific questions like, hey, this question is for our white allies only. How are you dealing with family and friends now that you're speaking up for Black lives, BLM, or being anti-racist? And sometimes the comments are so heartbreaking, because people will say that their family isn't talking to them anymore. My best friend and I didn't know that they were racist. This is happening. I don't talk to my mom anymore. And it's so, you read this stuff and you're just like, wow. And so, people are having really painful experiences.
so, and I mean, vegans go through that for being vegan as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's
So to get this double whammy of, it's how you're eating, and then maybe now that's not because now it's not so crazy anymore. When you're to be vegan, it's not as crazy.
yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, but you go through that and you finally, reconcile with your family, and then now it's like you're dealing with this, and it's like it's the hurt all over again. So
Right.
Black people are hurting because we're seeing all this brutality, and we're listening to the leader of this country dog whistle and send all these signals, and it's almost like you're in some type of Twilight Zone reality, to where you're like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with so much stuff, but sometimes I'm still just like, and here's the thing, what I do know is that I feel like we're going through a purge. The planet's going through a purge, and whatever's in you is coming out. So if you are, someone that is racist, has a lot of hate, is coming up. If you're I feel like the whole planet's going through a purge, because I do believe we are moving into creating a new world. But I don't think that's going to be a smooth, like, oh, we're in a new world and everything is flowers and beauty. Like, it's going to shake. It's going to be some earthquakes, some tornadoes, some hurricanes, some rainstorms, some fires. It's going to be all types of stuff because, it's this, especially this particular country, its foundation is based off of oppression.
Uh-huh.
So how do you, like, that's got to be detonated.
Well,
Like,
and it seems, I mean, I'm on the outside looking in, but
mhm.
what I see is the great divide, right? The people who are willing
Yes.
to accept, oh, just like we were lied to about all this vegan,
Yes.
nonsense that we can't survive just eating plants and we have to do all this to
Yes.
animals. The story of the founding fathers, the myth of the empty nation that people just came to, like, that nobody was displaced. I don't know how they twist the slavery story, but remembering that within that there were the Quakers. There was a big
Mhm.
segment of Quakers who were opposed to slavery and the displacement and the genocide of First Nations. And so it's like there's the people who just want to hold on to the myth, and then maybe the people who are willing to start to believe that, oh, okay, maybe there was something not quite right about that. And then huge amounts of people who are like, no, that was all crap, and we
Yep.
need to reconcile. It's a big reconciling you guys are
It's
going.
a huge reconcile, and that's why it's all painful. It's like, if you eat a a bunch of rotten food and horrible foods, and it's all rancid and it's in your body, it's gotta erupt. It's gotta come out some type of way. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm like, we're going through a purge.
Well,
And
and I just want to say that, Canada was also founded on theft and murder and a certain amount of slavery as well.
mhm.
We had slavery, and those folks went to New Orleans, and that's the Cajuns that escaped. The Cajun was Canadian, right? But there's
Mhm.
something about our government was brought from England, so we never had this sort of all-consuming faith in the power of the white master who's created this great nation. And
Yeah.
so from a person of color perspective, you guys
Mhm.
have always, although there's people also of color who have fallen for the story as well, right? So,
Oh, you got some that, and it's interesting when there's people I'm dealing with online, like they're former Facebook friends now, but Facebook friends that, will say all lives matter. And I'm like, hey, do you understand? I'll try to take the time with somebody that I care about and be like, hey, this isn't okay, this, that, and the other. And then next thing I know, they're posting a Candace Owens video to let me know, like, hey, she's Black and this is what she believes. It's like, there's always going to be some people. It's like with the Proud Boys. There's a darker skinned Cuban that is running that.
oh wow.
And it's like, you can't, yeah. So, yeah, there's always going to be people to me that have like a form of like self hatred. And what is that syndrome? I can't think of it right now. It's when you fall in love with your abuser.
The Stockholm
Um,
syndrome.
yes. I call it the Stockholm syndrome.
Okay,
So,
so let's circle back to veganism now, because I've heard it said that veganism might not be the solution to everything in the world, although I actually believe it is, but that no solution is complete without it. That we have to include veganism when we're talking about environmentalism or
mhm.
racism or peace or anything else. And one thing that you said somewhere, I heard you say, is about this idea of when we consume these animals, that we're consuming more than it's, we're getting protein, sure, we're also getting, cholesterol and fatty
Mhm.
acids that we don't need, but the idea that we're also bringing that energy, and the energy that they felt when they were in their last moments, the fear and the terror. And
Yes.
yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, on a more spiritual level, it's not something we could ever prove, but I think for people who are, who are empathic and who are
Yes.
functioning on that other level, there's some sense to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't understand, and I do believe that you can prove a certain point of it when it comes to cortisol and the fear and the, but when I use it, but for me, it's, I'm an energy person, so I'm not really scientific, so I try not to even go there in case I get challenged. But yeah, how could you not be consuming the fear and the terror, and taking that in? Because, and then it's, that's in their tissues. Like I remember reading something that was talking about, like, with humans, when we experience trauma, it's molecular, and that can be like, if there's a memory or a smell or something that comes back, your brain doesn't know that it's not really happening again.
Right, like PTSD, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It doesn't know that this is just a memory. It translates it into it, actually still happening. So if you're eating the tissues and the DNA and the molecules of an animal and you're taking that in, like, I wouldn't be surprised if that is a contributor to, um, you know, emotional health issues. You're taking someone in that, the thought of, like, and you smell the blood, you see your friends and your family go in and don't come out, or you hear their screams. Like, I don't even like horror movies that are like that, like, if it's like blood and like, I don't want to see that. I don't want, there's nothing entertaining to me about that. But it's like, if you're going to have that experience, how could it not stay in the tissues, in the skin? And we pretty much do everything to the entire animal. We eat the organs, the liver. The liver is where a lot of emotions are stored. And I remember eating liver as a kid. Like, that was like one of my, ugh, I did. I used to eat it. Not even gonna lie to you. I ate it and I liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mom was brought up in World War II in England,
Oh,
where scarcity,
wow.
and so they eat everything. Oh my God, like brains and kidneys.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was horrifying. And there
Yeah.
came a point where I was like, I really don't want to eat this. So she would disguise it because they really believed that you gotta have the iron from the liver.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
no, I believe. I mean, my body feels so different after all these years of purging the animal crap out of it, and my
Yes.
emotions are also different. And I think that people, when we're ingesting all that energy constantly, it's
Yes.
no wonder
Yes.
the world's so messed up, honestly.
Yes. Yes. And you had touched on something. Um, um, it always feels like a dangerous thing to say to me when people say that, when they say it in this way, that veganism basically is like the key to enlightenment. Like, if everybody went vegan, there'd be no more violence and there'd be no more harm. I truly, I want to, trust me, I want to believe that. I really do, because that would take so many different steps away. It's like, all right, well, all right, let's let everybody get vegan and that's it. But even within veganism, I was having an online conversation, and animal rights activist that I really respect and admire was talking about, if they could, they would slit the throats of a slaughterhouse worker
Well,
because they're working in the slaughterhouses. And I'm thinking, do you understand, sometimes who wants to grow up and be a slaughterhouse worker? Nobody. And a lot of times, uh, parolees, they have to get a job within a certain period of time, or they have to show that they've been that they're doing certain things to get a job. And these slaughterhouses are one of the places that will hire them on the spot. And undocumented workers, same thing. And somebody's like, oh, they can sell flowers. It's like, you know what, we say these things, but when your back is up against the wall and you're in those positions, you don't know what you will do to survive and protect yourself and prevent yourself from going back in those forced cells, or prevent yourself from being deported back to another country. working in slaughterhouse is probably a level up to some people. So it's like in our own community, we still have toxic thoughts. There's still a lot of racism in the vegan community. There's still a lot of homophobia. There's still a lot of sexism, ageism, fat phobias, all types of different isms and obias that are still happening. So I never, want to say that if you go vegan, that's it. Like, but being vegan to me is a huge quantum leap in your evolution. Like, you go vegan and you do it also for love and for yourself. Oh God, like, honey, you knocked out some steps right there. But it doesn't end there. You still have to evolve. There's still more evolution. There's still more loving to do. There's still more of a capacity to expand and experience more love. And I just don't think, veganism is the end, but I do believe it is a huge, huge step in creating change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I forget, there are, there are transphobic vegans and all sorts of, but I don't know, there's something I still believe that we're not going to get to that place,
Oh yeah.
until we're vegan. Like, we can't leave veganism out of the equation, right?
Right.
I think
No, it's definitely the equation. It's definitely in the equation.
really
That's
important part of, yeah. So
yes.
I don't want to tell you, this is your interview, but I just want to share with you my entryway into veganism is environment. I love the earth so much. I was raised on a farm, and I spent time with my horses and riding in the farm. And I mean, that was my world, right? And so when I learned about the impacts of animal agriculture on the earth, that was it for me. That's when I started on the pathway. It took me a while. It took me 10 years to get to vegan, but so for me, the idea that there are all these environmentalists, so many environmentalists really devoted to protecting the earth, they don't get the animal piece. And to me, they're missing such a huge piece of it, right? And so that's what I mean. I don't think, like, once we're all vegan, it's all going to be la, but I think we have to have veganism as part of whatever else we're doing.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I went to a environmental conference. It was a 3-day conference, and I think it was at UCLA. I can't remember where it was, but it was a 3-day conference, and the information was like amazing. It had great speakers, and I had a table there, vegan outreach table, and I had like samples of, like, I had Miyoko's cheese, Violife, crackers, bars, vegan jerkies, all types of little fun things that people could come. And I was shocked at how many of them were not vegan. Like, I would say 99% of them were not vegan.
So weird.
And I'm like, are you kidding? And they were like, I never heard of this before. How could you never heard? You're an environmentalist. You need to know about all the cheeses, okay? You need to be more aware about the products and what's in them and all that stuff than I do, because you're really tackling a huge issue. Like, not to say who's, tackling it more, but to me, like you said, if you're an environmentalist, you got to know how the animals, animal agriculture is a huge contributor to that. Yeah. And so to me, the fact that it kind of misses their radar and we're so close, but then I guess it's the same thing when people talk about people that are, Black Lives Matter people, when they think that they should be vegan because they're out there protesting for oppression, that they should automatically get it. There's so many people that think that. And it's like, again, the programming. It just...
And also, food is a really powerful thing. I mean, yes, it is. The environmentalist group, if the science is in, you can't deny the science, and they're really ignoring the science. But I kind of get it, because food for people, I would imagine, your community is built around food, right? And
Yes.
there's comfort there. And so if you're sort of thinking of, oh, well, I'm just not going to be able to eat that anymore, then
Mm-hmm.
that to me would be like a knife in my heart if I thought, well, this is all I have. Like this is my community and this is what we do
Yes.
together. So I kind of get that.
Mhm.
But there's
Yeah.
lots of great now, like you say, there's lots of wonderful people of color doing vegan outreach and like vegan food cooking, amazing stuff, and
Yes.
products and cooking shows and stuff. So for for this part of our conversation, you've experienced living in a very low income area in your life. And I've also
Mm-hmm.
been through that myself. And
Mm-hmm.
people say to me, oh, well, veganism, it's elitist, it's so expensive. But actually, you can do a whole lot with a very little. What do you say to people when they say that to you?
Yeah, like, so I think what people are thinking about are going out to restaurants.
Right.
And yeah, you're gonna need some extra coin for that. If you're gonna be going out to some of these, especially if you're here in LA, like, yeah, that's gonna break your bank. And then when people are also thinking about some of these, some of the newest innovative food products,
Yeah.
yeah, that can be a little bit pricey if you overindulge in those. But so I work with Vegan Outreach. We do a program called Vegan Food Aid. So on Thursdays we go to a community called Black Women for Wellness, and every week we try different types of produce and different things. Come drops the stuff off, and we put all the food in the bag. So like this week we had a bag of like King Trumpet organic mushrooms. We had Romanesco. We had kale. We had purple, red, and white potatoes. Um, we had plums. We had watermelon, organic watermelon, um,
Wow.
chives. All types of amazing things were in the bag, and it cost us like average like $35 per person. These bags are huge. Like they literally are like, I'm about to come get, we have a guy that helps people with their bags out to the car because they're so heavy. So when you're eating like that, it's actually much more affordable. When I was going through my struggle and I was renting a couch at Rhea's place, I was getting an EBT card, and that money would run out like really fast.
Sorry,
And I remember
what's that? EBT card?
it's like a government card that allows you to buy food.
Okay.
So you can go to like the grocery store.
Do those still exist?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Yep, they still
Okay.
exist.
Right.
But you have to be kind of, like not working or making little to nothing to get those. And so I remember one time I had $10 for the week.
Oh.
And I'm like, whew. I'm like, this is going to be a stretch. And I went to the 99-cent store and I got like those 3 avocados, like a bag with like 3 or 4 avocados in it. I got some pita bread. I got some rice, and I tore that up every day, and it was great, So it's like and it was good, So you can make it. I didn't know anything about really chickpeas.
Yeah, beans, legumes, right? Those are good.
Yeah, but chickpeas had never been on my radar. And so it's like, you can get a can of chickpeas and get yourself some rice and some mushrooms and some avocado, and you got a veggie bowl that's out of this world, So it's just about exploring and experimenting with different foods, because a lot of the foods that we'll bring, like one week we did we packed the bags with some rainbow Swiss chard. And people were like, what is this? Like, I've never seen rainbow collard greens before, which is what they look like. And, just so it's like people need to know that all these different foods exist, because when you're not vegan, people are used to eating the same stuff all the time. They're used to eating chicken, pork products, burgers, are used to eating the same stuff. But when you're not vegan, like cauliflower, I hated cauliflower. But now, like, I didn't know you could like batter up some damn cauliflower and have it tasting like, chicken and season it. So it's just about, you know, being creative, and when you get into this lifestyle, doing the research and seeing how people are thriving. But yeah, it's way more affordable to eat this way and keep it simple.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Okay, I think we're over our hour, but this is so interesting. I just want to finish up with on a happy note in terms of what gives us faith. So you've said that you think we're going to witness animal liberation even before we see liberation for people of color
Yes.
in the States. You really believe that? Yeah.
Yes, 100%. The reason I believe it is, one, people have more empathy for animals. I'm just stating.
That's crazy.
Yeah, people have more empathy for animals. I think it's easier to convince people because, you know, animals for the most part are innocent. You know, like,
So they don't talk
they
back.
don't talk back. Right, exactly. They don't talk back. They don't tell you to F off or you're doing it wrong or show up here at 3 o'clock. You know, like, they're not bossy. Well, I live with a cat. She's bossy and she does talk, but if she talked human talk, I don't know if we'd be living together. But also too, with just the progress I've seen. And when I first started this movement, when people say, "Oh, animal liberation this lifetime," I'm like, I didn't believe it. I'm like, there's no way. But I'm believing it now because the technology, the advances, the laws, like the progress is happening so rapidly that it's mind blowing, and I'm happy for it. Like, it's happening so fast, and you have so many groups that are doing the work in every sector, and they're unapologetic and they're consistent and they're fearless and they don't care about consequences and they're just getting it done. And you know, that combined with the fact that, like I said, I think people empathize more with animals than they do their own species. I definitely believe in my lifetime, if I'm here by the time I'm 80, I think it'll be a different world when it comes to how we treat animals, and even if we're eating them at all. I think what I do think will happen is there will be a lot more of the lab-based meats, because I don't believe that everybody is going to buy into veganism. I do not. But I do believe that with the lab-based meats, that might help people that, you know, have the urge to not want to change no matter what. So
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think COVID too is really awakening people to what a slaughterhouse is and what goes on there.
yes.
And that's really interesting what you said about people coming out of jail and heading into the slaughterhouses. There was a petition I signed not too long ago in Canada about trying to prevent
Oh,
prison workers in slaughterhouses.
let me tell you, I saw that. Someone brought that to my attention. And yeah, because they're trying to, like, I don't know if they're trying to bring slaughterhouses onto the prisons so
Oh,
that the prisoners can be the slaughterhouse workers. I'm like, that's so scary, because if that happens, that's going to take off everywhere, because that's another form of profit, because the prison system is truly slavery.
absolutely.
There's no, like, making it cute. It is slavery. And I just learned about, like, some corporation called Alex, and they're a for-profit prison system, and they're even on the stock exchange. They pay out quarterly dividends, and they basically have these companies, like Idaho Potato is one, I'll say allegedly, but they're one, and they have all this free labor. Victoria's Secret used to be one that used to get free labor from prisoners
Wow.
for making their products until they got called out, and then they pulled out. So I've been learning about this stuff, and I'm just like, this oppression, this capitalist, it's dirty and it's greedy and it's dark. And it's like, the more I know, because I keep saying, if, you know, probably next year around this time, I want to be living in another country, but it's kind of embedded in this whole planet.
It kind of is. Yeah, you can't really escape it. There's a battle everywhere in every country.
Yes, there is.
And you know, you guys are gonna. I really believe the U.S. You guys, there's so much spirit there, and you guys are gonna rise up above all this nonsense and create something really beautiful that's truly egalitarian. We might not live to see that, but I believe
That's what I'm saying. I don't know who's gonna see it, but I do believe that is the course we're on. And right now we're on the unshaky part. We're in the airplane and everything's shaking right now.
you gotta tear it down. You gotta tear it down before you can build it up. Sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed speaking with you, Gwenna. It's really cool to meet you. And as we leave, what do you want white people to know? I mean, who really do care? You know, I mean, I really care. I can't possibly understand what it's like to live inside a Black body. That, you know,
Yes.
that's my limitation. So, what do you want us to know about Black Lives Matter and being vegan? And what can we do? How can we be good allies?
Well, one of the things I want people to know about Black Lives Matter, a lot of people, even vegans, will still buy into the propaganda that Black Lives Matter is violent, that it's racist. I'm actually a member of Black Lives Matter. You have to, at least for here, you have to go to a certain amount of meetings in order to be an actual member. And I tell you, and I can only speak for here in Los Angeles, the meetings are diverse with all races. It's based on love and unity for everyone, not just for Black people. Yes, Black people are the focus because we're the ones receiving the most injustices, but it's about unity and love. It's about togetherness. It's about creating the change on the planet. And if you doubt that, just go to a meeting. Just get up, find out the next chapter meeting and go, and you'll see, like, it's really a community that wants the planet to really, you know, be together. But we need to focus on ourselves right now because that is the thing that's harming our culture. And I want people to also know that just because you see someone that's fighting hard for their oppression, the programming is really strong. And please don't assume that just because a Black person's fighting for their oppression that they automatically understand, that it unlocks their brain to understand that they're also causing other forms of oppression. It doesn't work that way. There's layers. I had a freaking dream and supernatural experiences and got touched with heat and peace and magic, and I still didn't make the full connection. So if I can't make the full connection and I got hit with, you know, all this love and beauty, like, understand that people are still fighting their own battles, and the veganism is an awakening, and it's a journey to get there. And so everybody's process, you may have gotten the message one time and you were like, oh, I get it. That doesn't mean that's how everyone else will. So please have empathy and compassion for people that are struggling to get the message. Right. There's people like me out here that are, because I do this once a month. I also go to Black Lives Matter chapter meetings, and I bring hot food and groceries. And so I'm letting the food right now speak for itself. But at some point, you know, we're going to create some more conversation. But yeah, I'm out here trying to do the work as well to awaken people in a compassionate way.
Good for you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been really wonderful to speak with you.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.